The podcast you're about to listen to may contain random lines from musical theater, terrible attempts at regional accents, and a sincere discussion about mental health. You have been warned. Are you ready to start singing with your feet? Formidable! Allez, c'est parti! Non, nous ne sommes pas fous, nous ne sommes pas ivres, nous sommes juste dans la joie. Une joie profonde, nos cœurs elle inonde. Cette joie, elle vient du ciel, non, nous ne sommes pas fous.
Welcome to Sing With Your Feet. My name is Lily Fields, and I'm going to be your fairy godmother for the next half hour or so. We're taking a break in our series about wardrobe therapy, preempted by a very important holiday. We'll catch up next week when we'll discuss what it looks like to actually declutter our closets and ways to deal with the items we aren't quite sure that we want to dispose of quite yet. We'll also briefly talk about the secondhand market for clothes and some ways to donate and dispose of things that we know we will never wear again. But this week we're talking about love. I can't imagine why. Oh, wait, is it Valentine's Day? Oh, really? How did I miss that? Believe it or not, says the narrator, she did in fact know it was Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day and Thanksgiving are my favorite holidays, you know. Thanksgiving because it's a day to be thankful and grateful and to say thank you. And Valentine's Day because it is all about love. And definitely not about romantic love because, well, that's not going to get us anywhere unless, of course, we are romantically going to offer ourselves a dozen roses and a glass of champagne while the candlelit bath is being drawn. Nope, we're talking about love, the kind that we have for ourselves and that will ultimately be what allows us to genuinely, without doubt or second-guessing ourselves, to love others authentically. And let's also clear up another misconception. We aren't talking about the feeling of love. The feeling of love is completely overrated. Today, we are talking about concrete, measurable actions of love that are demonstrable evidence of a psychological reality. This episode has gone through about 1 million iterations before you hear it, and only about half of them have I kept. Well, that's 525,600 of them to be exact, so it's a little bit more than half. If you were like me, when you saw the episode title, you instantly imagined a line of beautiful people on a shadowy stage singing that number. 525,600 minutes. I'm thinking of that number because, in case you are not like us, there is a song from the musical Rent that tells us that there are 525,600 minutes in a year. And side note, I have used this little fact to impress people here in France who have never had the privilege of lip-syncing the Tango Marine and singing Would You Light My Candle to the mirror in their late teens. People who did not offhand know how many minutes were in a year. So yes, apparently there are 525,600 minutes in a year, which I believe because I can do math and not because I have ever actually counted them myself. The song asks, how do you measure a year? And then it goes on, quite simply, to tell us to measure it in love. And one question I have been asking myself for the last 25 years is, how, Jonathan Larson, how? But how do I measure it in love? This question leads us, eventually, to this week's episode. First of all, let's define love, shall we? Because I believe I have already shot down the idea that love was a squishy feeling or evidenced by champagne and roses. So, the Oxford Dictionary tells me that love is an intense feeling of deep affection or great pleasure or interest in something. I'm not in love with the first part of this definition because already it relies on the idea that love is a feeling, which I've already said I simply don't agree with. Love is not a feeling. Sure, it can be, sometimes, on rare occasions. I maintain that love is a choice. not a feeling. But a choice to what, you may ask? It is a choice to focus our attention on something for the greater good. I feel like I need to justify my definition, so here goes. A while back, we talked about curiosity and how curiosity is a virtue that children possess in great measure. The evergreen toddler question, why, being Exhibit A. A child's interest is easy to capture, but can often be difficult to focus. This is why when a child says, I love Play-Doh, we think it's cute, but we don't worry too much that our child will become a professional Play-Doh artist. No offense to professional Play-Doh artists. Our ability to focus our attention is something that grows as we mature until we are able to make choices about how we spend our time and on what we focus our attention. We understand the cost and the rewards of our choices, at least most of the time. We understand that choosing to focus on schoolwork is an investment that will have a reward for us in the future. This future is the greater good mentioned in my definition. Love is a choice to focus our attention on something for the greater good. In that way, doing our homework, for example, if we did it, was an act of self-love. Our attention is such a unique thing. Our ability to focus on and accomplish something simply because we put our mind to it, it's a miracle. Am I sounding crazy? I think I might be sounding crazy. But think about the last time you had a really great interaction with someone, whether with your spouse or your child or, I don't know, the person who brought your groceries curbside. I bet it didn't happen while one of you was scrolling through Twitter. It happened when you both implicitly agreed to give your attention to the other. Choosing to focus our attention is the first step to love, and this is a hill I am willing to die on. So let's get back to my definition of love for a second. Love is a choice to focus our attention on something for the greater good. The greater good means of benefit to more than just oneself. Now, do not be surprised when your fairy godmother is going to bring this back to the golden rule and the importance of loving ourselves first. Do not think for a moment that I have lost sight of just how critical loving ourselves is. But let's go with this definition of the greater good for a sec. If we live with other people, we do a lot of things that we don't particularly enjoy doing. Changing diapers, making dinner, scooping kitty litter, scrubbing toilets, doing laundry, wiping noses. But the doing of these things is to the benefit of more than just ourselves, now isn't it? Therefore, according to my definition, doing the dishes is an act of love. Changing a diaper, an act of love. Folding the laundry is definitely an act of love. These are not things that make us feel warm and fuzzy inside, but choosing to do them, that act of the will that causes us to focus our attention on something, is an act of love. So, if where you are in your life right now, Cinderella, you are not feeling a ton of fuzzy, tender affection for your family or for your situation, be encouraged. The fact that you are still choosing to do the things that are of benefit to the greater good is a good sign. Now, you maybe are saying to yourself that I'm being defeatist with my definition of love, and maybe that I'm being a little dense and intentionally vague about what love is. Maybe I am, but you'll see why in a little bit. Why I have had to make room in my definition of love for the barest of bare minimum service in my definition. Putting aside your well-deserved criticism of my definition of love for one moment, I do particularly enjoy the Merriam-Webster definition of the verb to love. They say it means to hold dear or to cherish. I like to think that this means that the definition of the verb to love means that it is necessarily an action verb. I mean, it says it right there, to hold dear. It means that to love means we are actually doing something. The second definition, then, is to cherish, which I will concede is a more fuzzy-wuzzy kind of thing. Before my children were born, I read a book. I read a lot of books. I bought this one particular book because when I found out my firstborn was going to be a boy, and knowing that I only have one sister and a bunch of girl cousins, and my only experience was ever with girls, I kind of panicked when I found out. What am I supposed to do with a boy? I asked. So I went out and bought a book called Raising Boys by Steve Biddulph. The book is great, but there is one section that absolutely spoke to me long before my first child was born, and I'm going to read it to you. Science has trouble measuring something like love, but it is getting closer. Researchers studying mothers and babies have observed what they call joint attention sequences. This is love in action, love that you can see. When researchers filmed mothers and babies going about their day, they discovered that joint attention sequences happen perhaps 50 or 100 times a day. You will have certainly experienced this with your own child, Steve Biddulph goes on to say. The baby seeks out your attention with a gurgle or a cry. You look toward it to see that it is looking at you. The baby is delighted to make eye contact and wiggles with delight. You talk back to it. Maybe you are holding it or changing it, or maybe the baby is across the room as you work nearby. The exchange goes on, a pre-words conversation. It's delightful and warm. Another kind of joint attention sequence is when your baby is distressed and you croon, stroke it gently. Distract it, care for it based on your growing experience of what works to help calm it down. Or you engage with your baby just to enjoy seeing it become happy or excited. Soon, your joint attention may be directed at a toy, flower, animal, or noise-making object that you enthuse about together. You teach your baby to be interested in the work. A little later, he says, and it is a passage I noted in the book with a big, big, big star, it says, interaction, laughter, and love are like food for a baby's brain. So let's get back to the title of this episode, 525,600 somethings. How do you measure love? Apparently, when it comes to moms and their babies, love is something that can be seen. It means that love is not just a feeling that we rate on a subjective scale from 1 to 10. It means that love is something that can be witnessed and that moments of joint attention sequences can be counted. When you had a good interaction with someone, your spouse, your kid, the person who put the groceries in your trunk, you were experiencing a joint attention sequence. And we can choose to create more of these. We can choose to measure our life in love by focusing our attention on something for the greater good. We don't live our everyday lives with white-coated researchers following us around with clipboards, making hash marks every time they see us engage in a joint attention sequence. But if they did, just think about this for a second. How many joint attention sequences would they see us living out every day? Choosing to focus our attention on someone for even a moment when we are busy or distracted can feel like a monumental act of the will. Case in point, yesterday I was doing the dishes after lunch. We don't have a dishwasher in our apartment, so I was elbow deep in sudsy water scrubbing out the rice cooker. My mind was on the washing machine, which I had just heard clicked off, and I was trying to actively remind myself to go empty it and hang the laundry on the line. In the middle of this seemingly banal moment, my eldest child storms up to me and says, "I need stickers." I said, repeating under my breath, "Get the laundry, get the laundry, get the laundry, get the laundry." "Mama, I need stickers, and not my Avengers stickers." Right, not his Avengers stickers. Not the Avengers stickers that he had gotten in the mail the day before, which I knew exactly where they were. They were sitting on the counter. They had come from my father, Popeye, and Grandma Daisy the day before. This kid was smart. I was in a conundrum. My hands were wet and soapy. Stickers were not in an accessible place. If I wanted to, I could have told him to hold his horses and wait until I was done. But darn it, I'm trying to increase the number of joint attention sequences that my family experiences. I want my imaginary white lab-coated researchers to see me showing love to my family. I want love to be visible. So, I rinsed and dried my hands. I dug into the bin where the long-forgotten stickers were and intentionally went through them with my kid, focusing my attention on something with him for just a few seconds. I kissed his forehead before I stood back up and then went back to the dishes. This is nothing extraordinary, I know, but I was keenly aware that I had just done something meaningful, no matter how ordinary it was. Sure, this joint attention sequence could have happened without the kiss. As a matter of fact, My child probably would have preferred that it did. But for me, the touchy-feely one, it was important to punctuate the moment with what is my own love language. But affection does not require physical proximity to be meaningful. By the way, I did manage to forget about the laundry until the tail end of the day. But when I realized I had forgotten it, I didn't even get mad because I knew that the laundry had been sacrificed for a joint attention sequence with my eldest child. The laundry had to wait so that I could love on my kid. Now, if you are still thinking that I'm being willfully dense about what love looks like, then let me tell you about this. As a mother who spent the first 4 years of motherhood in a kind of depression-induced fog, I learned the hard way that love is not a feeling. When I was pregnant with my first child, I remember talking to women who still, even though their childs were adults, would get misty-eyed thinking about their children, how much they loved their children. I was primed to believe that this would happen to me, too. People assured me that this would happen to me, too. When it didn't happen to me, when the love hormones didn't kick in with my first child, when I would try to nurse him, people assured me that it would happen. Just had to keep on holding on, keep on trying. The irony, of course, is that nursing never went well with that child. And I have to wonder if maybe the hormones that are supposed to flood us with endorphins and simultaneously stimulate lactation, they just never happened for me. I had never liked babies. I wasn't a warm, fuzzy, cuddly type. The fact that I was having my own baby was a kind of surprise to even me. And here I was, with a child who cried all the time, for whom I felt very, very little. I started to believe that having a baby had been a huge mistake. And then the next thing I knew, I was pregnant again. In July of 2016, just ending the first trimester of this second pregnancy, with a baby for whom I still felt nothing, I gave up hope. Those years are a horrible fog of boredom and fear and stress and crying and diaper changes, and there is nothing I can point to in my memory of it that is any good at all. However, there are photos. When I look at those photos, I wonder how it was possible that I managed to get up every single day and I would put my makeup on and do my hair and somehow care for those children and even smile for photos. I see the photos and the videos and it looks like everything was fine. What was happening to me on the inside was invisible to anyone looking in from the outside. My husband did not even understand how deeply I was suffering. When that first baby was born and nursing was a struggle, I blamed myself. I talked to and about my body in the way I wouldn't ever speak to another human being. My body, as I perceived it, was the problem. My body was starving my child. This was my fault because I didn't feel enough love for him. If I could just feel more love, then the hormones would kick in and the milk would be abundant and the child would stop crying and he would be fine. Talking harshly to myself was never going to help me nurse my child. The second baby, he was a dream. His birth went well, he slept well, our nursing relationship went smoothly, thank goodness. But I still felt nothing for the child. It is entirely possible to feel nothing and still perform the gestures required to care for another human being. If my children today survived their early childhood, it is because I learned to imagine that a white lab coat-clad researcher was following us around, marking down every time we had a joint attention sequence. I learned to choose to make those moments happen, even when my heart wasn't in it. Interaction, laughter, and love are food for a baby's brain, Steve Biddulph had said. It was a miracle that I had read those words before I started to experience postpartum depression. The barest of bare minimum was all that I would have to give for 4 years. Choosing to create those joint attention sequences was a way to feed my baby's brains even when I couldn't experience the euphoria and the joy of the feeling of love.
Elle me fait bondir et vibrer, crier. Elle me donne envie de chanter, danser. Elle pousse à agir, donner, partager. Et tout simplement de sourire, aimer.
When the depression finally lifted and I started feeling things again, I knew that those moments of interaction had not been wasted. They had been little building blocks, little somethings that while each one individually would seem insignificant, the amassing of them over time had been sufficient to create a relationship of affection when I was finally capable of feeling affection again. When it comes to loving ourselves, it is exactly the same thing. We cannot expect to feel tenderness or overwhelming feelings of affection for ourselves when we are first learning how to do this. Sure, we wash our face in the morning and we put on our makeup. Sure, we eat. But are we doing it with focused attention on the person we are serving? That is, ourselves. It boggles my mind that we can be so careful about our appearance, but not actually love ourselves. Imagine for a second that you're washing a baby's hair. It is a gesture of intimacy, a shared joint attention sequence. You are concerned that the water be the right temperature, and you might even ask the child if the water is too cold. There is trust in that moment. Now, do you actually pay attention to yourself when you are washing your own hair? I challenge you the next time you wash your hair to do so with an attitude of truly focused attention on your experience of it. Focus on the smell of the shampoo, on the temperature of the water, on the way it feels to massage your scalp, on the way the lather feels between your fingers. Doing something so banal and commonplace as washing your hair can become an act of self-love, a tiny little ritual that can bring you to feel more in love with yourself. So now, on this Valentine's Day, I am going to make 4 tiny little suggestions. Number 1, I want you to focus on one thing at a time. Stop multitasking. If you have to make a list so that you don't forget everything that you need to do, then make a list. But only do one of those things at a time. Number 2, put away your devices. Seriously, leave your phone in the other room. It will not kill you, I promise. Number 3, treat yourself like an honored guest. Think about something you would do for a visitor. I don't know, like changing your sheets. Then do it for yourself because you deserve something nice. And number 4, take the time to do the things you love undistractedly. Today, for example, I want to set aside an hour to play the piano. I desperately want to do this. So I've scheduled it for myself. It's on the calendar, and no one will take this away from me today. I want you to do something you love and to do it undistractedly. All right, so here comes the segment of the show where I catch you up on my efforts to do for others what I would want done for me. I call it the Golden Rule rules. First, let me set the stage for you. Here in France, substitute teachers are not a given. There is no guarantee that if a teacher is absent or on strike, I mean, we are in France, right? That a substitute teacher will be provided. So parents are left to their own devices. I'm fortunate because my work allows me to manage my own schedule, so I can have my boys at home without a problem. I mean, it isn't ideal because I don't get to get my work done in the usual time I've set aside for it, but no one's keeping tabs on me. So imagine this. It's Monday morning, and at 7:30 a.m. you get a message from your child's teacher saying that she will be absent. Like I said, other than the inconvenience factor of it, I decide to be cool. But I get to thinking about the other parents who don't have an easy solution for finding last-minute childcare. Now, keep in mind, you know I don't love kids, right? I mean, I don't mind them for a few minutes here and there, or maybe if I can transmit some kind of knowledge to a kid, but being responsible for kids, I hate it. That said, My heart breaks for the mom whose son is in my class, whom I have come to know and to really love, and who I know has no other solution for childcare. So I take a deep breath and I tell myself, what would you want done for you? And the answer is, I would want someone to offer to take my kid for the day, or at least for the morning. Oof, I know that sounds like just a tiny little thing, a tiny little conclusion, but I knew that I would need to put it into action. So I start thinking through the morning what all I would have to do in the next 20 minutes in order to get the apartment guest-worthy. And just as I start writing a message to the mom, we got another message saying that the teacher would have a substitute to replace her. And I will admit that I breathed a huge mega sigh of relief. Doing for others what we would want done for us sometimes feels like a sacrifice. And this week, I was saved by the bell. But I can be sure that this will be tested again some other time. And I need to be willing. I really need to be willing. All right, Cinderella, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Happy Valentine's Day. You are amazing, you are beautiful, and I want you to always remember that. I'm so honored that you took time out of your day to spend some of that treasure with me. I am tickled to hear from you when you have your closet quandaries, so keep it up. I hope I've been useful to some of you, and I want to hear more, so please, please, please reach out to me. That's on Instagram at singwithyourfeet, or by email, lily@singwithyourfeet.com. That's Lily, Lily. Be great, Cinderella. I believe in you. I want to give a great big thank you to 7 Productions here in Mulhouse, France, for the use of the song La Joie as the intro and outro to the show, to Matt Kugler, who you can find on social media as Matt-K, who sang it, and to Claude Ekwe, who wrote it. This is your fairy godmother signing off. Just remember, it is never too late to start singing with your feet.
525,600 minutes, 525,000 moments so dear, 525,600 minutes. How do you